The Man Who Saw Time, Chapter 1, The Forgotten Ritual. Göbekli Tepe, 10,000 BC. The Man Who Saw Time. Author, Raimundo Filho. Dedication, page 3. To Enki, the man who saw time pass like an infinite river, who carried the weight of millennia on his shoulders, who loved intensely and lost everything, time and again, but never gave up seeking the light at the end of eternity. This story is yours. You who were betrayed in the cradle of humanity. You who regenerated from the ashes, from the blades and the shadows. You who faced the fury of a goddess with nothing but hope and courage. May these pages be the mirror of your journey, and that, at the end of it, you finally find the peace that time denied you for so long. With eternal admiration, the narrator who dared to tell your story. Prologue, The Shadow That Waits. Göbekli Tepe, 10,000 BC. The night fell over the stone hills like a mantle of obsidian. The cold wind from the plateau carried the smell of freshly turned earth and the distant echo of deerskin drums. In the center of the circle of gigantic monoliths, T-shaped pillars carved with foxes, scorpions, and birds of prey, bonfires crackled, casting dancing shadows that seemed to come to life on their own. Enki watched everything from afar, crouched among the thorny bushes. His light brown hair, long to his shoulders, swayed gently in the breeze. His dark green eyes, deep like ancient ponds, followed the movements of the hooded priests. He was just a hunter, called by the elders for reasons he still did not understand. He was about 40 springs old, with fair skin marked by the sun and hunting scars, but something in him seemed older than the hills themselves. The priests murmured in a forgotten language, words that made the air vibrate. In the center of the circle, a stone altar waited. On it, carved symbols, intertwined serpents, 7-pointed stars, a female figure with open wings. They spoke of her, Lilith, the first, the mother of shadows, the one who had been expelled from the heavens and embraced the earth with fury and desire. She was there, not visible to ordinary mortal eyes, but he felt her. A heavy presence, like the weight of a storm before thunder, a shadow darker than the night, hovering between the pillars, watching. Her eyes, if she had eyes, burned with curiosity and suspicion. Lilith knew something was wrong. The priests promised honor, promised a blood pact to strengthen her lineage, but the intonations were false. They wanted to steal what belonged only to the gods, eternity. One of the priests raised an obsidian blade, gleaming in the firelight. Another scattered dry herbs over the embers, releasing a thick, sweet smoke that rose in spirals to the stars. The circle closed, and Enki was called to the center. He advanced, barefoot on the cold earth, his heart pounding hard, but without fear. Just an ancient curiosity, as if he had already lived this moment in dreams of lives that were not yet his. Lilith approached, invisible, but so close that Enki felt the air cool around him. A whisper, almost inaudible, brushed his mind. They lie, they betray, and you will pay the price. The priests began the final chant. The blade descended, and in the shadows beyond the circle of light, Lilith waited, not with the patience of a goddess, but with the fury of one who had been betrayed once, and now would be betrayed again. Time was about to gain a new prisoner, and she, a new eternal prey. The wind cut across the plains of Göbekli Tepe like an icy blade, carrying with it the smell of damp earth, burned herbs, and the dried blood of animals sacrificed days before. The sun, already weary, dipped into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rust and purple, as if nature itself sensed what was coming. The gigantic stones, carved with symbols that defied time, stood like silent sentinels, witnesses to knowledge that humanity was not yet ready to understand. Enki, the hunter, walked among the pillars, his bare feet feeling every irregularity of the sacred ground. He was not an ordinary man. Since his childhood, his dreams were visions, cities that did not yet exist, towers that touched the clouds, machines that flew like birds. But today, the air felt different. Today, he felt that something was about to change forever. Why me? Enki thought, as he watched the shadows dance around the bonfires. Why did they choose me for this? He knew it wasn't a random choice. His blood carried the memory of generations, a lineage dating back to the first clans that inhabited the riverbanks. His grandfather, a shaman, had told him stories about the chosen ones, men and women who in times of great need were called to seal pacts with forces beyond human comprehension. But they never told him that they would be from them. A figure emerged from the shadows, wrapped in a cloak made of wolfskins. It was Ur-Namu, the oldest priest, whose eyes seemed to hold centuries of secrets. His face, marked by ritual scars, was a mask of seriousness. He did not smile. He never smiled. "Enki of the river clans," said Ur-Namu, his voice hoarse like the grinding of stones. "The moment has arrived. The dreams have prepared you. Now the blood will seal you." Enki felt a shiver run down his spine. He knew Ur-Namu since his childhood, but had never seen him so serious, so distant. "What do you plan to do with me?" Enki asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Ur-Namu extended his hand, revealing a stone bowl filled with a dark, thick liquid, blood mixed with ashes. "You will be the bridge, Enki, the guardian of knowledge that cannot be lost." "Knowledge?" Enki frowned. "What knowledge?" Ur-Namu did not answer directly. Instead, he pointed to the pillars around them, each engraved with symbols that seemed to pulse in the firelight. "Those who come after you will forget. They will forget where they came from. They will forget the gods who created them. But you, Enki, you will remember." Enki felt a knot form in his stomach. He didn't want to be a guardian. He didn't want to be a bridge. He wanted to hunt, to live, to exist without the weight of a destiny he didn't choose. "And if I refuse?" he asked defiantly. Ur-Namu looked at him with an expression that mixed pity and determination. "Then others will come. Others will be chosen. But you, Enki, you have already been marked." Enki looked at his own hands as if expecting to see in them the marks of an inevitable destiny. He knew Ur-Namu spoke the truth. Since he could remember himself as a man, his dreams were filled with visions, cities that did not yet exist, people who had not yet been born, voices whispering secrets in languages he did not understand. "Lilith?" Enki asked, finally. "What does she have to do with this?" Ur-Namu hesitated. For the first time, Enki saw a flash of fear in Ur-Namu's eyes. "She is the key," Ur-Namu replied finally. "And the price?" Enki asked. Enki stepped away from the priests, seeking a moment of solitude among the stones. He needed to think. He needed to understand. "They're not telling me everything," he thought as he watched the stars begin to shine in the sky. No one ever tells everything. He remembered the dreams, always the same. A woman with black wings, red eyes like embers, a voice that echoed like 1,000 furious winds. Lilith. She was not a benevolent goddess. She was not a protector. She was something older, more dangerous, something the priests feared but still sought to control. "They want to rob her," Enki realized suddenly. "They want to take something from her, something that doesn't belong to them." He felt a wave of nausea. He didn't want to be part of this. He didn't want to be complicit in a betrayal against a force that not even the priests fully understood. But at the same time, he knew that he had no choice.
When Enki returned to the circle of bonfires, the priests were already gathered, their leather masks painted with symbols he did not recognize. Ur-Namu followed him with his gaze, as if he knew what was going through his mind. "Are you ready?" the priest asked. Enki took a deep breath. He was not ready. He never would be. But he knew that if he refused, others would be forced to take his place. And he, at least, knew what was coming. At least he had dreamed of it. "I am," Enki replied, his voice firm despite the fear burning in his chest. Ur-Namu nodded, and the other priests began to chant, an ancient guttural chant that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth. Enki felt the ground tremble slightly, as if Göbekli Tepe itself was awakening from a long sleep. He closed his eyes and prepared for what was to come. The bonfires burned in a perfect circle around the central altar of Göbekli Tepe, their flames dancing in shades of blue and red, as if fueled by something more than wood
and resin. The air was heavy with the smell of fresh deer blood, bitter herbs, and a thick incense that made the head spin. The 7 priests, now dressed in wolfskin cloaks and leather masks painted with symbols of birds of prey, moved in silence, each fulfilling a specific role in the ritual. Enki, naked except for a deerskin loincloth, was led to the center of the circle. His body, marked by scars from past hunts, gleamed in the firelight, sweaty not from the heat, but from tension. He watched everything with attentive eyes, memorizing every detail, every symbol traced on the ground with ashes and blood. "Why 7 priests?" Enki asked, breaking the silence. Ur-Namu, who was overseeing the preparation of an obsidian bowl filled with a dark liquid, looked at him. "7 are the clans that sealed the first pact," the priest replied. 7 are the portals between this world and the other. 7 are the seals that keep Lilith imprisoned. Enki felt a shiver. Imprisoned? No one had ever told him that Lilith was trapped. "And why is she imprisoned?" he insisted. Ur-Namu hesitated, his fingers trembling slightly as he held the bowl. "Because she knows the truth," he whispered. "The truth about creation, about what comes after death, about how to cheat time." Enki felt his heart race. Cheat time? Was that what they wanted? Immortality? Before he could ask more questions, the priests began to chant. Their voices, deep and guttural, filled the air, vibrating in the stones of Göbekli Tepe. Enki recognized some words, names of forgotten gods, invocations to primal forces, but most were incomprehensible, as if echoed from a time before human language. Each priest wore a unique mask, painted with symbols representing the 7 faces of creation, the all-seeing eye, the eternal observer, the serpent that devours its own tail, the infinite cycle, the winged woman, Lilith the first, the man with a bull's head, brute strength, the tree with deep roots, the connection to ancestors, the sun and moon intertwined, the balance of opposites, the hand holding a flame, forbidden knowledge. Enki observed the masks with fascination and terror. Those symbols were not merely decorative. They pulsed in the firelight, as if alive, as if breathing. "What do these symbols do?" Enki asked, pointing to Ur-Namu's mask, which displayed the winged woman. Ur-Namu touched the mask with reverence. "They do nothing alone," he replied. "They are keys, portals. They only work when there is a sacrifice to open them." Enki felt a lump in his throat. "My sacrifice?" he asked. Ur-Namu did not reply. Instead, he signaled to the other priests, who began tracing symbols on the ground around Enki, using blood and ashes. Each symbol corresponded to a mask, creating a circle of invocation. As the priests worked, Enki heard fragments of their conversations, whispered as if they feared being heard by invisible forces. "He doesn't know what's coming," murmured one priest, his mask displaying the all-seeing eye. "He doesn't need to know," replied another with the serpent mask. "If he knew, he wouldn't accept." "And if Lilith refuses?"
Enki asked, his voice trembling. Ur-Namu looked at Enki, his eyes cold behind the mask. "She will have no choice," he said. "The ritual is designed to force her. Your blood is the anchor, your pain the lure." Enki felt a knot in his throat. "They're betraying her," Enki said, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. The priest stopped. Ur-Namu turned to him slowly. "No, Enki, we are saving humanity," he replied coldly. "Lilith knows the secret of immortality. If we let her free, she will use it to destroy everything. We will just take it for ourselves." Enki laughed, a bitter sound. "You haven't understood anything," he said. "She is not a goddess who allows herself to be robbed. She is vengeance. She is fury. You're invoking a hurricane and thinking you can control it." Ur-Namu did not reply. Instead, he raised his hands, and the priests resumed their chant. Enki knew at that moment there was no turning back. Before the ritual truly began, Enki looked at Ur-Namu, his dark green eyes shining with a mixture of fear and determination. "Tell me one thing," he asked. "If I survive this, what will I be?" Ur-Namu hesitated, and for the first time, Enki saw fear in the priest's eyes. "You will be the first," he replied finally. "The first to carry eternity and the curse that comes with it." Enki nodded, accepting his destiny. "Then so be it," he whispered, and the priest's chant rose until their voices became a single roar echoing in the stones of Göbekli Tepe like an omen of storm. The air inside the circle of fire suddenly cooled, as if the very heat of the flames had been sucked away by an invisible force. The bonfires, which had burned in shades of blue and red, now flickered in a sickly purple, as if poisoned. The priests, once so confident, now trembled. Their leather masks seemed to contract, as if fearing what was to come. Enki felt a pressure in his chest, as if something was being torn from inside him. He looked down and saw that the symbols traced on the ground with blood and ashes were glowing, pulsing like living veins. The priest's chant had become a guttural scream, a language no longer human, but something primordial, like the roar of beasts forgotten by time. And then she arrived, not as a woman, not as a goddess, but as a storm of shadows. First, it was just a sigh in the wind, a murmur that seemed to come from all directions at once. Then the shadows between the pillars of Göbekli Tepe began to move, as if gaining life of their own. They stretched, twisted, until they formed a feminine silhouette, tall, slender, with black wings that seemed to absorb the light. Lilith. Her eyes glowed like embers, and her skin, if it could be called skin, was a web of darkness and light, as if she were simultaneously here and elsewhere. Her hair, long and black as night, floated without wind, and her hands, ending in sharp claws, opened and closed in a hypnotic rhythm. The priests fell to their knees, their masks now useless before what they had invoked. "You dared to call me." Lilith's voice was not a sound, but a vibration in the bone, a pain that echoed inside the skull. Enki felt his teeth ache as if they were about to shatter. Ur-Namu, the only one still able to move, raised the obsidian bowl with its contents, blood and ashes, bubbling as if boiling. "Great Lilith, first among the firstborn," he said, his voice trembling but firm. "We invoke you not to worship you, but to free you, to give you a vessel, a body, a chance to return to the world of the living." Lilith laughed. It was not a joyful sound. It was the creaking of dry bones, the cracking of breaking ice. "Liars," she screamed. "You don't want to free me. You want to rob me." Enki felt something burn inside him, as if his own blood was boiling. Ur-Namu did not back down. Instead, he raised the bowl higher, as if offering it to the sky. "We will give you a body, Lilith, an immortal body, a vessel that will never age, never die. In exchange, we will take only a little of your essence, enough to ensure that our descendants never forget, never die. Lilith tilted her head like a predator observing its prey. You want immortality, she said slowly, but you don't understand the price. We understand, Ur-Namu replied, his voice now a whisper, and we are willing to pay it. Lilith extended her hand, and the shadows around her twisted, forming gigantic claws that hovered over the priests. The price is not the life, it is the memory, it is the sanity, it is everything that makes you human. The priests trembled, but did not back down. Enki in the center of the circle felt something move inside him, as if a part of his soul was being pulled out. "Stop!" Enki shouted, his voice echoing in the stones. "You can't control her," Enki shouted, as Lilith's shadows coiled around the pillars like serpents. "You will destroy everything." Ur-Namu ignored him. Instead, he quickly poured the contents of the bowl over Enki's chest. The liquid, blood, ashes, and something more, something alive, burned his skin like acid. Enki screamed, but the sound was muffled by the priest's chant, which now was a chorus of agony. Lilith extended her hands, and the shadows materialized into claws, tearing the air as if it were fabric. 2 priests fell, their throats opened in seconds, blood gushing like fountains. The others screamed but did not stop the ritual. They couldn't stop. Enki felt something enter him like a river of ice and fire. His vision blurred, and for an instant he saw through Lilith's eyes. He saw cities in flames. He saw men and women screaming as they were devoured by shadows. He saw himself thousands of years in the future, still alive, still alone, still cursed.
"No," Enki roared, but his voice was no longer his. It was a mixture of his own voice and Lilith's, a chorus of pain and fury. And then the blade descended. The pain was instantaneous and infinite. The obsidian blade, black as a starless night, cut his skin like butter, plunging straight into his chest, toward his heart. Enki felt the air escape his lungs. The world spun in red and black, and, for an instant, he thought it would all end there. But then something happened. The blood gushing from his wound stopped in midair, as if frozen in time. Enki looked down, incredulous, as he saw the edges of the wound begin to close, like petals of a flower opening in reverse. His heart, pierced by the blade, pulsed once, twice, and suddenly he felt air fill his lungs again. The priests recoiled, horrified. "What have we done?" one of them shouted, his mask of a man with a bull's head, now stained with blood. Ur-Namu trembled, his eyes wide. This wasn't supposed to happen," he whispered. Enki rose, still panting, with dried blood stuck to his skin. He felt something inside him, something ancient and furious, as if Lilith had left a part of herself in his body. And then Lilith spoke, not with the voice from before, not with the roar of 1,000 winds, but inside his mind, like a venomous whisper. "You now carry my curse, Enki," Lilith said, her voice echoing in his thoughts. "My fury, my pain, my thirst for vengeance." Enki clenched his fists, feeling sharp nails which were not his growing on his hands. "What have you done to me?" he shouted, but his voice no longer sounded human. It was a mixture of his own voice and something much older. Lilith laughed, and the sound tore through his mind. "I gave you what they wanted," she said, "immortality, but there is a price." Enki looked at the priests. Half of them were dead, their bodies twisted like dry branches. Those still alive trembled, their eyes filled with primordial horror. "You didn't know?" Enki said, his voice now a guttural rumble. "You didn't know what you were doing?" Ur-Namu fell to his knees, his hands shaking. We only wanted to save our people," he said, his voice broken. "We wanted them never to forget where they came from." Enki laughed, a sound bitter and full of pain. "You have condemned our people," he said. "Now they will never forget, because I will never let them forget." And then Lilith manifested again. This time, not as a shadow, but as a storm. Her body materialized in the center of the circle, her black wings extending to touch the pillars of Göbekli Tepe. Her eyes glowed like bonfires, and her voice was thunder. "You tried to deceive me," she roared, and the ground shook with her fury. "And now I will steal from you." The priests screamed as shadows enveloped them, ripping off their masks, tearing their flesh. Ur-Namu was the last to die, his eyes fixed on Enki as the darkness consumed him. "Forgive us," he whispered, before his throat was opened by invisible claws. And then, silence. Enki was left alone in the circle of fire, now extinguished. Only ashes and twisted bodies surrounded him. Lilith floated before him, her form oscillating between beauty and horror. "You are now mine, Enki," she said, her voice smooth as venom. "My vessel, my bearer, my eternal reminder of what they did." Enki felt something move inside him, as if a serpent had coiled around his soul. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice broken. Lilith smiled, and her smile was the full moon before a massacre. "I want you to suffer, to live, Enki, to see civilizations rise and fall, to love and lose those you loved, to wait for death and for death never to come to you." Enki felt tears burn his eyes, but they dried before falling. "Why?" he asked, his voice just a whisper. Lilith approached, her hand touching his face. Her touch was ice and fire. "Because you are the first," she said, "and you will not be the last." And then she disappeared, leaving only the echo of her laughter and the weight of an eternity of solitude. Enki fell to his knees on the ground of Göbekli Tepe, his hands trembling. He felt everything, the dried blood on his skin, the wind cutting his back, the weight of something inside him that was not human. He breathed deeply, and the air burned his lungs, as if his body were adjusting to a new existence. He looked at his hands. They seemed the same, but he knew they were not. He felt the power, or the curse, running through his veins like a river of darkness. "What have I become?" he whispered, but no one answered. The priests' bodies lay around him, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Göbekli Tepe, once a place of mystery and reverence, was now a tomb. Enki rose slowly. He felt different, stronger, faster, more alive than ever, and, at the same time, more dead than any corpse. He touched his chest, where the knife had pierced him. There was no scar, as if nothing had happened. "I cannot die," he said, and the realization hit him like a stone. "I will never be able to die." It was a mixture of joy, fear, and dread. And then he heard laughter, not Lilith's, but his own. One part of him knew this was a curse, that immortality was not a gift, but a prison, that he would see everything and everyone he loved die, while he continued alone forever. But another part, the part that now carried Lilith's essence, smiled.